I already signed the papers, Stepbrother smirked, showing the purchase agreement. The new buyers were moving in tomorrow. I remained completely calm. The condo board president requested the actual owner, but the conference room on the 42nd floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. I sat in my usual spot near the corner, watching Marcus pace back and forth with his phone pressed to his ear. He was animated, gesturing wildly as he spoke to someone about closing costs and wire transfers. No, they're moving in tomorrow, Marcus said loudly, making sure everyone in the building's management office could hear him. The penthouse is finally going to someone who can actually afford it. My pathetic stepbrother has been squatting there for months. I took a sip of my coffee and continued reviewing the quarterly maintenance reports. The building manager, Mrs. Patterson, glanced at me with concern, but I gave her a subtle shake of my head. Not yet. Marcus had been my stepbrother for 15 years. Ever since his mother married my father when I was 19 and he was 23. The marriage lasted 6 years before my father passed away from a sudden heart attack. In his will, Dad left Marcus's mother a generous trust fund, and Marcus himself received a substantial cash inheritance, nearly $500,000. I received the penthouse. At the time, Marcus didn't seem bothered. He was making good money in pharmaceutical sales, driving a leased BMW, and dating a woman who worked in private equity. The penthouse was too much responsibility for him anyway, he'd said at the reading of the will. Too many HOA fees, too much upkeep, too pretentious. That was 7 years ago. Marcus burned through his inheritance in 4 years. Bad investments in a friend's tech startup. A boat he couldn't afford to maintain. A wedding to the private equity girlfriend that cost more than most people's houses, followed by a divorce 18 months later, that cost him even more. By year 5, he was back in his mother's basement, the BMW repossessed, working as a regional sales manager for a medical supply company that paid half what his previous job did. And suddenly, the penthouse didn't seem so burdensome anymore. It started small. Marcus began showing up for family dinners at his mother's house, where I was always invited out of courtesy. He'd make little comments about how I was wasting the penthouse, how I barely used it since I traveled so much for work, how it was really a family asset that should benefit everyone. I worked as a structural engineer for a firm that specialized in high-rise construction across the Midwest. My job took me to Minneapolis, Detroit, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, sometimes for weeks at a time. Marcus saw this as proof that I didn't deserve the penthouse. "You're never even there," he said one Sunday over pot roast. Meanwhile, I'm crammed into Mom's spare room like I'm 16 again. Dad would have wanted the space to go to someone who'd actually use it. His mother, Linda, nodded along. She'd always resented that my father left me the penthouse instead of her. Never mind that she received a trust fund that paid her $70,000 a year for life. Never mind that she owned her house outright, mortgage-free, thanks to my father's life insurance. The penthouse was worth approximately $2 million. That's what bothered them. I never argued. I'd simply finish my dinner, thank Linda for the meal, and go home to my underutilized penthouse. 3 months ago, Marcus's campaign escalated. He started telling family members that I'd agreed to sell him the penthouse at a family discount. Cousins would mention it at gatherings. "So generous of you to help Marcus get back on his feet," they'd say. I'd smile politely and change the subject. Then Marcus began bringing potential investors to family events, friends from his country club, former colleagues, anyone with money who might want to partner with him on a real estate opportunity. He described the penthouse in detail, mentioning the marble bathrooms, the chef's kitchen, the private terrace with skyline views. "My brother's finally ready to let it go," Marcus would say, slapping these strangers on the back. "Family price? Just need to get the paperwork sorted." I never contradicted him in public. I knew what he was doing. Building a narrative. Creating social pressure. Making it seem like the deal was already done, so that I'd look like the bad guy if I backed out. 2 months ago, he showed up at the building. I was in Milwaukee reviewing structural plans for a new hotel when Mrs. Patterson called me. "Your stepbrother is here," she said carefully. "He's asking for a key to your unit. Says he needs to take measurements for furniture. Don't give him access," I said calmly. "He's insisting that you told him he could." "Mrs. Patterson, Marcus doesn't have my permission to enter the penthouse. He doesn't have permission to have a key. If he continues to insist, please call building security." There was a pause. "Understood, Mr. Hayes." When I returned to Chicago 3 days later, Marcus was waiting in the lobby. He stood up from one of the leather couches near the concierge desk. His face red. "You embarrassed me," he hissed as I walked toward the elevator. "I had the interior designer waiting outside for an hour. Do you have any idea how unprofessional that made me look?" "You don't own the penthouse, Marcus," I said quietly. "You can't hire designers for property you don't own. It's happening whether you cooperate or not." He snapped. "Mom's lawyer is drawing up the papers. Family transfer. You're going to sign and I'm going to pay you a fair price, and everyone's going to be happy. I'm not selling." His jaw clenched. "You don't have a choice. Dad would have wanted this. You know, he would have wanted me taken care of." Dad's will was very clear about what he wanted. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're being selfish. You're never here. You don't need this much space. I have a life to rebuild and you're standing in my way because of some petty need to lord your inheritance over me." I pressed the elevator button. "I'm not selling the penthouse, Marcus. Not to you. Not to anyone." "This conversation is over." The elevator arrived. I stepped inside. Marcus jammed his hand between the closing doors. "I'll get what's mine," he said. "One way or another." The doors closed. That was 6 weeks ago. For a while, things went quiet. Marcus stopped coming to family dinners. Linda stopped calling me. I assumed they'd finally accepted reality. I was wrong. Yesterday morning, I received an email from someone named Donald and Patricia Berkshire. The subject line read, "Penthouse closing schedule. Dear Mr. Hayes, we're excited to finalize the purchase of Unit 4.21 next week. Our moving company has been scheduled for Friday, March 15th. We wanted to coordinate with you regarding the key handoff and any items you'll be removing from the unit before we take possession. Please let us know your availability for a final walkthrough. Best regards, Donald and Patricia Berkshire." I read the email 3 times. Then I called Mrs. Patterson. "Has Marcus been in the building recently?" I asked. "He was here Monday," she said, meeting with a couple in the lobby. They looked at the building amenities, the gym, the rooftop deck. He introduced them as the new owners of your unit. What did you tell them?" "Nothing. It wasn't my place to interfere in what I assumed was a private sale. There is no sale." Mrs. Patterson, silence on the other end. "Then, Mr. Hayes, I think you should come in. There's been some confusion." I drove to the building immediately. Mrs. Patterson was waiting in her office with a manila folder. Inside were copies of documents, a purchase agreement, an earnest money receipt, a closing disclosure form. The buyer was listed as Donald and Patricia Berkshire. The seller was listed as Marcus Jerome Whitmore with a note indicating he held power of attorney for the owner, James Alexander Hayes. Me. The purchase price was $1.85 million. Closing date was March 18th, 4 days from now. "This is fraud," I said calmly. "I suspected as much," Mrs. Patterson replied. "But the Berkshire seemed legitimate. They've already wired the earnest money, $50,000. They've hired movers. Mrs. Berkshire was asking about paint colors yesterday. Where's Marcus now?" "He said he'd be back this afternoon with his lawyer to sort out some HOA transfer paperwork." I checked my watch. It was 11 in the morning. "What time is the monthly board meeting?" I asked. Mrs. Patterson blinked. 2, but that's just for board members and I'll be there." I said I spent the next 2 hours making phone calls. My attorney, the title company, the police fraud division. By 1:30 I had everything I needed. At 1:45 I walked into the conference room on the 42nd floor. Marcus was already there, sitting at the head of the table like he owned it. Next to him was a man in an expensive suit, presumably his lawyer. Across from them sat Donald and Patricia Berkshire, a couple in their early 60s, both dressed in business casual, both looking excited and slightly nervous. The board members filed in: Mrs. Patterson, the treasurer, Mr. Okoro, the secretary, Miss Vasquez. 2 at-large members whose names I'd never learned, and finally the board president, Thomas Brennan, a retired federal judge who'd lived in the building for 20 years. I took my seat in the corner. Marcus saw me, and his confident smile faltered for just a second. Then it returned wider than before. "James," he said warmly, "glad you could make it. I wanted you to meet Donald and Patricia. They're buying the penthouse. Well, they've already bought it, technically just sorting out the final details." Donald reached across the table to shake my hand. "Mr. Hayes, we're so excited. Your brother has told us so much about the unit." "Stepbrother," I corrected gently. Right, Donald chuckled. We've been looking for something in this building for months. When Marcus approached us about a private sale, we jumped at it. Patricia nodded enthusiastically. The price was incredible, below market by at least $100,000. We know you two wanted to keep it in the family, so to speak. Actually, Marcus interrupted smoothly, James has been traveling so much he realized it made more sense to sell. Didn't you, James? Everyone looked at me. No, I said quietly. The room went silent. Marcus's smile tightened. What James means is I mean no, I repeated. I never agreed to sell the penthouse. I never gave Marcus power of attorney. I never authorized this transaction. Patricia's face went pale. Donald looked at Marcus confused. Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. James, come on, we talked about this. You said I wasn't selling multiple times. You chose not to listen. Now hold on. Marcus's lawyer interjected. Mr. Whitmore has documentation showing. Forged documentation, I said calmly. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. I have the original email from the title company sent yesterday confirming that no power of attorney exists on file for Unit 4.21. I also have a statement from my actual attorney confirming that I never executed such a document. Thomas Brennan leaned forward. Mr. Hayes, are you saying this sale is fraudulent? Yes, this is ridiculous, Marcus snapped. James is just having cold feet. We had a family agreement. He's trying to back out because I'm the owner of record. I said, I never signed anything. I never agreed to anything. Marcus doesn't have authority to sell my property. Donald stood up abruptly. We wired $50,000. We hired movers. We gave notice at our current apartment. I'm very sorry, I said sincerely. But you'll need to pursue recovery of your funds from Marcus, not from me. Patricia looked like she might cry. Donald turned to Marcus, his face darkening. You said this was legitimate, Donald said slowly. It is legitimate, Marcus insisted. James is he's confused. He travels a lot. He gets mixed up about. I'm not confused. I said I'm the sole owner of Unit 4 2001. I have the deed. I have the title. I pay the HOA fees. Marcus has no legal claim to my property. Marcus's lawyer was flipping through his folder frantically. His face had gone from confident to panicked. Thomas Brennan cleared his throat. Mrs. Patterson, do you have the ownership records for Unit 4.21? Mrs. Patterson pulled up a file on her laptop. James Alexander Hayes, sole owner since 2018. No transfers, no liens, no secondary claims. This is insane, Marcus shouted. I'm his family. Dad left him that penthouse and he's never there. It's sitting empty while I'm Manook while you're committing real estate fraud. Thomas said coldly. It's not fraud. It's family business. Selling property you don't own is fraud. Mr. Whitmore. Forging power of attorney documents is fraud. Accepting earnest money under false pretenses is fraud. Donald was shaking with rage. You told us you had full authority. You showed us papers. Those papers are fake, I said quietly. Marcus doesn't own the penthouse. He never did. He's been telling people for months that I agreed to sell it to him. I never did. Marcus turned to me and for the first time I saw genuine desperation in his eyes. James, please. I need this. I'm drowning. The debt, the pressure, everything. I need this sale to go through. Just sign the papers. I'll give you a fair price. Better than fair. Just don't do this to me. You did this to yourself. I said, we're family. That didn't stop you from forging documents with my name on them. Thomas stood up. Mr. Whitmore, I'm obligated to report this to the authorities. Mrs. Patterson, please call building security and someone should contact the police. Marcus's lawyer was already packing his briefcase. I was not aware of any misrepresentation, he said quickly. My client assured me all documentation was legitimate and withdrawing from this matter effective immediately. You can't just leave, Marcus said desperately. Watch me. The lawyer walked out. Marcus looked around the room at the board members, at the Burkers, at me. His face cycled through emotions, anger, panic, disbelief. You're really going to do this? He asked me. You're going to destroy me over a penthouse you barely use. I'm not destroying you, Marcus. You destroyed yourself. I'm your brother. You're my stepbrother, and you tried to steal from me. Building security arrived. two uniformed officers who looked confused by the situation. Thomas explained briefly. They asked Marcus to step into the hallway. Patricia was crying now. Donald had his arm around her. His jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles working. They'd been scammed, and they knew it. "Mr. and Mrs. Berkshire," I said gently, "I'm truly sorry this happened to you. I recommend you contact the fraud division of the Chicago Police Department and file a report. You should also contact your bank about the wire transfer. There may be a way to recover your earnest money." "Will you testify?" Donald asked if we press charges. "Absolutely." They left, Patricia still sobbing. Donald supporting her weight. The board members dispersed quietly, leaving just Thomas, Mrs. Patterson, and me in the conference room. "How long has this been going on?" Thomas asked. "Months." Small comments at first. Then he started telling people I'd agreed to sell. Then he started bringing potential buyers around. I thought ignoring it would make it stop. "You should have reported this immediately." "I know." I kept thinking he'd give up. I didn't want to believe my own stepbrother would actually commit fraud. Thomas nodded slowly. "The police will want a statement from you. This is going to get complicated." "I understand." Mrs. Patterson touched my arm. "I should have called you sooner. When he first started bringing people around, I should have known something was wrong." "You didn't know?" I said, "Marcus is good at selling stories. That's literally his job." Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see Marcus in the hallway arguing with the security officers. His face was red, his gestures wild. He pointed at me several times. The officers remained impassive. My phone buzzed. Linda was calling. I answered. "What did you do?" She screamed immediately. "Marcus just called me from the building. He said you're having him arrested. He said you humiliated him in front of buyers. He said he tried to sell my penthouse. Linda, he forged documents. He took $50,000 from people under false pretenses." "You're lying." "I'm not. Ask him about Donald and Patricia Berkshire. Ask him about the fake power of attorney. Ask him why his own lawyer walked out of the meeting. He was trying to rebuild his life. You have everything and he has nothing. You couldn't just help him. He didn't ask for help. He committed fraud. You're vindictive. You're cruel. I'm Depp." Thomas was watching me. "Family gatherings are going to be awkward. I stopped going to those months ago. 2 police officers arrived, actual CPD, not building security. They spoke with Marcus first, then with Mrs. Patterson, then with me. I gave them copies of everything, the emails from the Berkers, the forged documents, my attorney's statement, my title and deed proving ownership. One officer, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes, shook her head as she reviewed the papers. "People get stupid about real estate," she said, "especially family. We see this more than you'd think." "What happens now?" I asked. "We'll investigate. If the Berkers press charges, and it looks like they will, your stepbrother is looking at fraud charges, maybe forgery. Depends on what the state's attorney wants to pursue. Will he be arrested? Probably not today. We'll refer this to detectives. They'll build the case. Could take weeks." Marcus was still in the hallway, now sitting on a bench with his head in his hands. The security officers stood nearby, waiting. The police interviewed him next. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw his body language, defensive at first, then deflated. He glanced at me through the glass once. I didn't look away. After 30 minutes the police left, taking their report with them. Marcus remained on the bench. Thomas excused himself. Mrs. Patterson started gathering papers. "Do you want me to have him removed from the building?" she asked quietly. "No. Let him leave on his own." She nodded and left. I walked into the hallway. Marcus looked up at me. His eyes were red. "I needed this," he said hoarsely. "You don't understand. I'm drowning in debt. The IRS is after me. I'm about to lose my car. I'm 40 years old, living with my mother. I needed this." "Then you should have asked me for help, not tried to steal from me. Would you have helped?" "I thought about that. I don't know. But you didn't give me the chance to decide. I couldn't risk you saying no, so you risked prison instead." Marcus stood up slowly. "You're going to prosecute me, your own brother, stepbrother, and yes, Dad would be ashamed of you. Dad would be ashamed of what you tried to do." Marcus walked to the elevator. Before the doors closed, he turned back. "I hope that penthouse is worth it," he said. "I hope it's worth destroying your family." The doors closed. I stood alone in the hallway for a long moment. Then I took the elevator up to the penthouse. The space looked exactly as I'd left it 3 weeks ago. Clean, minimal, expensive furniture that I'd barely used. Marcus was right about one thing. I wasn't here often. My job kept me traveling. The penthouse was more investment than home, but it was mine. My father left it to me specifically. He knew what he was doing. I walked onto the terrace and looked out at the Chicago skyline. The sun was setting, painting the buildings golden orange. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Donald Berkshire. Our attorney filed a police report. Thank you for your honesty. We're pursuing full prosecution," I replied. "I'll cooperate fully with the investigation." Another text, this time from my attorney. "CPD contacted me. They're taking this seriously. Multiple felonies possible. Keep all documentation. Don't speak to Marcus or his family without me present." I replied, "Understood." I thought about Linda's words. Vindictive, cruel. Maybe she was right. Maybe I could have handled this differently. Maybe I could have confronted Marcus sooner. Stopped this before it got this far. But he'd made his choice. He decided that his needs justified fraud. That family gave him permission to steal. That my absence from the penthouse meant I didn't deserve it. He was wrong. The skyline darkened. As night fell, lights began appearing in the buildings around me. Thousands of them. Each one representing someone's life, someone's home, someone's story. This was mine. Marcus would face consequences. Legal ones, financial ones, probably family ones too. Linda would never forgive me. Other relatives would take sides. Holidays would be uncomfortable if I was invited at all. But I'd protected what was mine. I'd stood up against someone who thought he could take it simply because he wanted it badly enough. My phone rang. "Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Hayes. I wanted to let you know. Marcus tried to access the garage. Security stopped him. He claimed he'd parked there earlier and needed to get his car." Had he parked there? No. We checked. I think he was hoping to get into the building again. "Okay. Thank you for letting me know. One more thing. The Berkers left their contact information. They want to testify if this goes to trial." "Good. Are you all right, Mr. Hayes?" I looked around the penthouse at the marble floors, the designer furniture, the view that cost $2 million. "Yeah," I said. "I'm all right." After we hung up, I poured myself a drink and sat on the terrace as the city lights multiplied in the darkness. Tomorrow, I'd call my attorney and discuss next steps. Tomorrow, I'd coordinate with the police investigation. Tomorrow, I'd deal with the fallout from a family that would never understand why I chose property over loyalty. But tonight, I just sat in the home my father left me. The one Marcus tried to take. The one I'd fought to keep. It was quiet up here, 42 floors above the street. It was worth it.